Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zeng here, and today I am back with my 5th round matchup from the Brooklyn Premier Challenge last weekend that I attended. If you have not seen the first 4 games already, definitely check them out, they are in the description below. After a pretty resounding defeat in round 4, I was definitely hoping to win the next 2 in order to make the top 8, and I knew I had to play a lot better than I did in the previous one, and I had to put aside that loss in order to come back. The next round I was matched up with Danny Hemchan, who some of you guys may actually remember because we featured his team on Road to Ranked way back, I think around May of last year. He got top 4 at Massachusetts Regionals with that team, and he's a really awesome guy and a great player, so I was looking forward to this matchup. His team was Rayquaza, Ferrothorn, Liepard, Crobat, Greninja, and Kyogre, so the 2 he did not bring were Liepard and Crobat, and it's kind of funny since the last 3 rounds we've all run into a Liepard in team preview, but none of our opponents have brought in it. My team is Cresselia, Kangaskhan, Groudon, Palkia, and once again I opted not to bring Landorus or Amoonguss because I felt like these 4 as a core were really solid enough. Landorus here didn't offer too much, especially against special attackers like Kyogre and Greninja. And Amoonguss could have been potentially helpful, but he had Ferrothorn, Rayquaza, and Crobat, so Crobat can taunt there, Rayquaza can Dragon Ascent for a knockout, and Ferrothorn just doesn't get spored or gets hit by Amoonguss at all. So once again I opted for the same 4 Pokemon because I felt like they were just the best options given that my opponent's team wasn't heavily physical and had answers to Amoonguss. So I opted for the Cresselia Kangaskhan lead as opposed to Palkia because Palkia here I was a little bit scared of the Rayquaza, and Cresselia I knew could take any combination of attacks, especially with fake out support from Kangaskhan. The weather wars in this game were definitely scary, just looking at team preview because he had Kyogre and he had Rayquaza, so you have to be super careful when playing against both of those because if you're not, they can easily switch in their Rayquaza and go for a water type attack even when you have your Groudon on your field, so that's always a play you have to consider. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump into the match. I was definitely pretty excited to see what the Greninja on his team did too, since Greninja is a really solid Pokemon in 2016, given that this metagame kind of rewards frailer Pokemon. As always, if you enjoy these videos, please share your support by leaving a like on the video, I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, he's going to lead with Rayquaza and Kyogre against my Cresselia and my Kangaskhan, so I know that this lead matchup isn't too bad because I can go immediately for a fake out and set up my Trick Room without much to worry about. So he is going to Primal with his Kyogre, and the real question here is whether he decides to protect the Rayquaza or Mega Evolve / attack. The thing is, if he Mega Evolves, then my Groudon will be able to come in safely the following turn because it actually cancels out the Delta Stream from Rayquaza. So I'm really happy to see like he Mega Evolve this first turn because that means that I'm going to be able to 1, get Trick Room up, and 2, if he goes for the Dragon Ascent onto Kangaskhan, I'll be able to actually get a free switch into my Groudon. And you can see that his team is really weak to Groudon in terms of his last 4 Pokemon. None of Liepard, Crobat, Greninja, or Ferrothorn can deal with Eruption at all, and I'll still be able to put on some offensive pressure, especially by getting a free fake out off here against Kyogre, which does around 30% of damage in itself, so that's really solid here. So as expected, he does go for the Dragon Ascent here with Mega Rayquaza, and he is going to target down my Kangaskhan slot. So normally that's, comes down to a damage roll if you're bulky, but because I'm not bulky, it's just a 1-hit KO. Gets a crit there, but doesn't really matter, and that's basically how I was expecting the first turn to play out. I knew that Kangaskhan wasn't as important in this matchup as the previous ones because he didn't have a Xerneas on his end, and I knew that if I maintained the Weather War well enough, that Groudon would be able to come through. The skill swap on Cresselia also made things a little bit easier in terms of prediction because the nice thing is if your opponent switches in their Kyogre or Rayquaza or Mega Rayquaza, you can skill swap immediately to put the sum back into your favor. So even though I am down 4-3, I have 4 full turns of Trick Room to take advantage of, and Groudon coming in here is a huge beast for my opponent to deal with. So with the Desolate Land up here, I actually just go for the Ice Beam Earth Power play, because I know there's nothing on his team that can switch into an Earth Power. I mean, sure, Eruption would be nice here, but I'd rather, in case the Kyogre stays in, just, get more damage off here. So, in retrospect, Eruption would have been a fine play too, but he goes for the Protect and switches out into Greninja, and I'm pretty happy about that since Greninja is not a slow Pokemon. Being one of the fastest Pokemon in the game, I can easily just knock it out here, but he does have the Focus Sash, which keeps him around a little bit longer here. Ice Beam goes into the Rayquaza and doesn't do anything, obviously, since he protected. This next turn, I decide I actually am going to go for the Eruption play, because I figure he's probably going to switch back out into Kyogre, and so in prediction of the Kyogre coming in, I go for the skill swap to reactivate the Sun. Instead, he actually just switches out into Ferrothorn and doesn't protect with Greninja, so this means that I do pick up 2 free knockouts this turn, which is pretty ideal for me here. I figured even if he switched out into Kyogre, Greninja would probably go down. I mean, another really good play he actually could have made was switching into Kyogre with Greninja and just going for a Dragon Ascent with Rayquaza. And since Eruption wouldn't have picked up the knockout there, it could have been a little bit scary, but instead, that works out perfectly as I do pick up the knockout on both Greninja and Ferrothorn, basically predicting, you know, he's probably not going to let me Ice Beam the Rayquaza. So that's 2 turns of Trick Room down, so I do have 2 more turns to take advantage of, but still have to be pretty careful since Rayquaza is a very, very strong Pokemon, and he's going to be able to get his Rayquaza and Kyogre in. The nice thing though here is because their weathers trump each other, the water or the rain isn't around from Kyogre anymore. So I know that I'll be able to win the weather war fully because I can just switch Groudon out and back in. So this next turn is a little bit risky as I bring the Palkia, and I'm not sure if he's going to go for the prediction here and maybe predict Palkia to come in, go for a Dragon type attack, but I do know that I have the Hoppin Berry on that slot. He actually goes for the Origin Pulse with Kyogre and unfortunately misses my Cresselia. However, I knew that I could take an Origin Pulse and a Dragon Ascent onto that slot, so you know, I figured even if he goes for that, it's not the end of the world. The Ice Beam damage onto Rayquaza is nice, and more importantly, I switch out the Groudon, because if I stayed in there, I actually would have just gotten knocked out. So you see there, like Cresselia hangs on with 89 HP, so another one would have been fine, and this is the very last turn of Trick Room. So I figure here he's probably going to double protect, and for that I actually go for the double Trick Room play, which allows me to reverse Trick Room and bring it back up for another full 4 turns. However, his Kyogre doesn't protect, which is a really good play on his end, so if he picks up the knockout onto Cresselia, I know that I'm actually in a little bit of trouble, but I'm able to hang on with just 14 HP because I am pretty bulky here. So Cresselia sets up Trick Room, or reverses it, and Palkia basically sets it up again for another full 4 turns, and I know that once Cresselia hung on from Origin Pulse, that the game was decided right there. Another play I could have made was just going for the Helping Hand Spatial Rend, but I really wasn't sure whether Kyogre was going to go for the Protect or the Attack, and I figured as long as Rayquaza doesn't attack here, you know, he's probably going to Protect at least with Rayquaza, then I should be perfectly fine. So, very, very close match here. Spatial Rend here does connect with the Rayquaza, and does pick up the knockout, so always a little bit scary because you do have to deal with the 95% accuracy. And Rayquaza fortunately does go down. So with that, I know that Groudon is able to come in safely, and with another full couple of turns of Trick Room, there's really not very much you can do. So this game was super scary because of the weather wars, but me setting up Trick Room was really huge. However, even despite the fact I was up 3-2, what 2 more turns of Trick Room gone, I still had to play pretty safely and carefully in order to ensure the matchup to be, you know, in my favor. The tricky thing is if Trick Room were to expire, then Groudon, Palkia, and Cresselia were all slower than Kyogre and Rayquaza, so he could have doubled up on any Pokemon and picked up the knockout, so we would have had some mind games of, you know, whether it comes down to Protect and whatnot, but really didn't want to leave it to that, so fortunately enough, the double Trick Room play was enough to seal up the deal, and he, you know, didn't see it coming either, which was helpful. So Earth Power and Spatial Rend from Palkia are enough to knock out the Kyogre, and we are able to win the 5th round in a 2-0 victory. Really close one though. You know, Ferrothorn and Greninja didn't do anything, but Rayquaza and Kyogre were strong enough to put on pressure the whole time. And obviously going down 3-4 immediately on the first turn is never easy as well, so I had to think of, you know, what I could do afterwards. But fortunately enough, Groudon and Palkia had enough firepower to really seal the deal up. And that was definitely a really exciting match and a close one as well, because anytime you decide to give up one of your Pokemon immediately, you have to play really smartly. And Kangaskhan certainly would have helped out in the matchup even after Trick Room expired. So it was a risk I was willing to take, and fortunately enough, it did work out. So after winning this one, we were 4-1 going into the final round, so had to win that one in order for a chance to make the top 8. Win actually ensured me to make it, and a loss would put me on the bubble, which meant that it was very unlikely I would make it if I lost the last one. So it all comes down to that one. You guys will have to see what happens in that match tomorrow. Anyway, thank you for watching. As always, leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Alright, peace.